you're not gonna have an IDE. They're gonna be pulling up like a piece of paper or a whiteboard and be like, hey, I need you to solve this problem in O of N time. Good luck. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for clicking on this video. And if you clicked on this video, it's probably because you're struggling on Leetcode, you're struggling on data structures and algorithms, you're struggling on, getting into that whole grind. You see everybody online saying, hey, you got to go Leetcode, you need to do this, this, this. In this video, I wanted to break it down and I wanted to help you understand what needs to be done, what needs to be understood, and what needs to, what the actions that you need to do in order to move forward and actually progress in this Leetcode interview nonsense. So let's get right into the video. So the first common problem when it comes to Leetcoding is that when you first come into this whole world, environment of Leetcode, you are going to find yourself lost. You're going to find yourself struggling. You're going to find yourself not even knowing what's going on, with this programming. And when I say that, I think about, when I was first in like maybe first year of college, I was like, oh man, people are getting high paying tech internships doing this software engineering Leetcode. You just got to pass this Leetcode interview. It's easy. You get paid a bunch of money. And I hopped on there and I started memorizing problems, and that did me no good. I found that out real fast. And I want to save you a little bit of time. You might be thinking, hey, maybe I could just remember these problems and, move on. If I get in the interview, I just, remember how I did it. The issue with that is that you're going to come by a new problem that you haven't seen before. And if you haven't remembered it or memorized it, then you're not going to be able to solve that problem or even be able to try to solve that problem. So what I want to get across is I want you to understand this framework of not just solving Leetcode problems, but actually learning how to understand and try to figure out Leetcode problems for the interview. Because at the end of the day, we're not solving Leetcode problems for fun. I mean, it is kind of fun. It's like doing it's satisfying, but it's like working out. Working out can be fun, but at the same time, it can not be fun. So, but the same thing applies to this Leetcode. And when it comes to interviewing, you got to stop remembering these problems and start recognizing the patterns. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is when you hop on, let's say, if I ask you to solve two-sum, which at this point you should know what two-sum is. If I ask you to solve that, what are you thinking first? Are you first thinking about, oh, hash map? Are you thinking about, okay, what's two-sum? What's the problem say again? I think I used Python. I know what for loop I use. See, as soon as that frame of mind, those first few things that come into your head, that is key when it comes to in Leetcoding. So for example, you're in the interview and I ask, solve two-sum. The problem with remembering the two-sum, problem is that it's hard to remember and come up with the solution if you forgot about it. So what I'm trying to say is, if you think about two-sum as, you do hash map or you do a brute force hash map and then you iterate, then you're thinking on, implementation. You're thinking on the implementation. You're thinking about, unordered map in C++. That's not too good. I mean, when you remember things, like going through, try to remember the problem, that's what you're going to think about. What I'm trying to offer, what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that you need to understand the flow. So first ask, what should come into your head is the algorithm to solve two-sum, the data structure to solve two-sum, not how to implement it. So for example, when you say, hey, okay, we need to use an array, and I think two-sum, you have two numbers that add up to the target value. You're thinking, okay, we're not going to use a tree. We're not going to use, all these other unnecessary data structures. So you don't, remove that from even your brain at this point. You're not even going to be thinking about those data structures. You're going to be thinking about your two arrays, maybe hash maps, maybe a stack. I don't know. It may or may not be right, but you have these three to choose from in your head, and you can say, okay, well, let's work this through. And you're talking through the interview. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and use an array, and I'm gonna go through the for loop, and we're gonna need two for loops to hit those two numbers. And you see this way of solving the problem? Do you see how I'm kind of like not really giving you the solution, but I'm explaining to you what's going on in my head about the data structure and what I'm kind of thinking about the for loops. This is what the interview is looking for. And man, I want you to understand this, that so that when you're in the interview and they ask you to reverse, a linked list, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna be thinking about, oh, I need to do this in the code. No, I'm gonna be thinking, okay, what's this really asking? We don't need any additional data structures. Okay, what are my constraints? Okay, can we do one loop? What's and you work with the interviewer, and that, I think that is the core value in Leetcode. Excuse me. What I'm saying is, now you are no longer worried about what question you got asked on Leetcode or in the interview. You're no longer worried about that. What you're worried about is solving a problem and explaining your thoughts with the interviewer and hoping to get them to understand where you're coming from, and so that they can understand what you're saying, and how can you even verbalize what you're saying in the interview. And man, this is so key. This is so key when it comes to interviewing, because you know it's so key, because when you can break down a problem to somebody else and get them to understand it, that's where the value is, man. Because when you're at the work job, when you're at the career, when you're in the office, you're not going to be solving leak code problems. You're going to be solving real problems. And to be able to explain these problems to your manager, to your team, to your coworker, and getting together and solving it and figuring out how we're going to move forward, and what's the best way to do optimize, what's the best way to move forward. The next thing I want you to understand is that the smart way to practice is not always the most efficient way to practice. So you may be thinking, well, if I'm solving 10 problems a day, 5 problems a day, then I must be learning something, right? Wrong. You could go through the motions and do this stuff, but if it's not in you, if you really don't know what's going on with these problems, then it's useless. Like, there's no reason. You're solving the problem just for your ego at this point, just to see the little green dot of your daily salvage. So man, you need to start practicing smart. Get on the leak code, look at the problem, kind of understand it mentally. Like, this goes back to step one, what we were talking about, being able to understand and explain. Know what data structure you're using, how you're using it. And then the implementation, man, that should be a whole nother way of practicing. Like, that's like in basketball. You implementation, let's say for example, is just shooting threes over and over, shooting threes. But when you're in the game, you're probably going to shoot threes maybe one, maybe two, three times. But the most of the time, you're going to be dribbling. You're going to be going back and forth. You're going to be running. You're going to work on that cardio. Same thing applies with Leetcode, man. You don't want to just keep solving so many problems over and over and over and not really understand them. You can solve it and then forget about it tomorrow. And what I like to compare this to is languages. So most of the time, if you heard of this program called Anki or Anki, however you want to say it, a lot of language learners use that to get that memory in their head over and over and over and over. See, this is a brute force way of remembering something. And it kind of works if you're going to do that for Leetcode. I mean, I never seen anybody make Anki cards or Anki cards for Leetcode problems, but hey, maybe that works, because some people learn 6K words through a deck and over and over and over and over. But maybe that'll work for Leetcode. But for most of us, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be going in the interview. We're going to be reading a problem, and we're going to try to solve it. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to know about all these Leetcode problems. I just want to be able to solve them when they come up. And that brings me to the next step, man, is simulate an interview. Why are you doing this Leetcode? Are you doing this just to add to another skill? Because if that's the case, then you ain't gonna be on this video. You're gonna be doing code forces, solving them competitions. You're on a different level. But for most of us, we're doing this for interviews, okay? And I want you to be able to simulate an interview. This brings me to the next step, man. Set a timer, 30 to 45 minutes on a problem. Okay. That's how long you're probably going to have with somebody. That's how long you have to take a problem from unknown to known, or at least close to it, or at least hope that you could, work with somebody to get to that, because that's your time frame. You can start. I know there's a lot of, other softwares, other websites that allow practice interviews, but honestly, I never done any of that. And honestly, I think whoever's doing that, I don't know. That's just not me. Yeah, you could try to do that. Go ahead. But for me, what helped me tremendously when it comes to practicing these mock interviews or whatever is I would pull up a problem on LeetCode. Okay, only read it, and I would not even open up or run that IDE that's in LeetCode. So you know how you can run code. Don't even do that. Open a Word document, a Google Doc. Okay, right then and there. Then start solving the problem, because 90% of I'm about to give you some secret game right here. 90% of the time, you're not going to be able to have an IDE to run the code. Maybe at these big companies, but you're not going to have an IDE. They're going to be pulling up like a piece of paper or a whiteboard and be like, hey, I need you to solve this problem in O of N time. Good luck. So, man, I'm about to give you some tips here. When you're doing these, simulating these interviews, you want to go ahead and like iterate. So if you do a brute force solution on your document, make sure that, okay, you did the brute force, and if they say, hey, could you do blah blah blah, could you increase this, could you make it, could we not use that data structure? Okay, leave that brute force code on top. Do not delete any code that you write, because this is key. Because when you save, when at the end of the interview, they're going to save that document and they're going to go through like, oh yeah, he was doing this, he was doing this, oh, that's where he was coming from. Right then and there, man, you get brownie points, because if you deleted your past work, even though it wasn't good or wasn't optimal, it was in there. They saw that you were thinking about it. They saw this, and this is key. This will, this is how you can start practicing. And also, if you can't run the code in your IDE, then you're practicing right there. You're learning how to, think without just hitting run. Oh, do I do a semicolon? Hit run. Oh, int main. Oh, hit run. Is it Boolean? And that's how you start learning how your syntax goes. And man, like I was saying, you put all this, package it together, and know that you're doing this for interviews. Okay, if you're doing it for some other reason, do it for the other reason. But in this video, I'm talking about, the strategy to land an interview, land a job. I'm coming from how to actually land a job, how to actually land an interview. And that's why I'm using Leetcode. Leetcode is a tool to help me do that. And that's where I'm coming from. So I want to go ahead and reiterate and go over what I was talking about in this video, just to sum it up. So the first thing you need to do is stop memorizing. Okay, stop that. That's enough. And start recognizing patterns. When you see a problem, are they using dynamic programming? Does this look like a dynamic programming? Does this look like a brute force? You think I could solve this in 2 for loops? Okay, start doing those patterns. Oh, this looks like a stack. I saw this other problem. Put 2 and 2 together. Boom. That's when it's going to come useful in the interview. Okay. All right. The second thing, you need to start practicing smart instead of practicing hard. And what I mean by that is start actually understanding the problems. Start actually understanding the solutions in your head, so that when it comes into the interview, you can actually learn, you can actually like explain, you can actually move forward and do this even without seeing the problem before. And the last thing is simulate like an interview. Pull up that Word doc, no IDE, start going through the problem, have the problem LeetCode, have the LeetCode problem on the left, have your Word doc on the right, and just think, if I was in the interview right now, what would I tell them? How would I start this off? What would I do? And man, those 3 steps, or those 3 or 4 steps right there, that's how you can actually, this is a good strategy to actually implement that will actually take you forward in LeetCode, take you forward in interviews. And this is only a part of the game. Okay, this is only a part of the bundle. And like I said, there's applications, there's LeetCode, there's getting the interview. There's, introducing yourself in the interview, the personality part. There's so many steps to this process that this is only a little small smidget. And if you have this thing locked down, then you don't have to worry about it. You got it oiled and greased. You know the daily steps that you have to take. You know the daily actions that you need to do in order to get your interview, in order to land that job, in order to, get a salary or whatever, or internship. Like I said, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'm actually putting together a internship handbook that will kind of go over all of this from straight from zero. You don't even have anything to building a profile, to how to leak code, how to interview. I give you some secret tips, and all the way to the end during the internship. And man, look out for that. I'm in the what do you call that? I'm grinding. I'm about to build that out. So be on the lookout for that. Check out my website. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.